everyone, and welcome back to Keep Indiana Learning. My name is Tim Arnold. I'm a digital learning coach with Keep Indiana Learning, and today I'm here with my fellow digital learning coaches, Brenny Kummer and Dianna Knox, for the final episode of our book study series, Keep Indiana Reading, The Shift to Student-Led Edition. Today, our focus will be Chapter 10 and Workflow Shift number 10, from teacher project design to student-led project-based learning. But before we dive in, let's do some introductions.
All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Brenny Kummer. I'm the Assistant Director of EdTech for Bartholomew Consolidated School Corporation in Columbus, Indiana. I'm also a former social studies teacher. I taught middle school and high school social studies. Tim also is a social studies person. Yay. And then I'm on the Indiana Connect Educators Board, and I love talking about UDL. I'm excited to talk about this chapter today.
And I am Dianna Knox. I'm a technology instructional specialist from Clay Community Schools in Brazil, Indiana. I'm wrapping up my 7th year in this ed tech world, but before that I spent 18 years in the classroom teaching English language arts, theater, Spanish, all those fun things. So I'm excited to work as a digital learning coach. Next year will be the innovation coaches with Keep Indiana Learning. And I also serve on the HEC board alongside Tim. And I work with Instructure as a community coach because I love all things Canvas.
And as I said, I'm Tim Arnold from Richmond Community Schools, a 34-year public school educator, 26 years in the classroom, in social studies, 7 through 12 classroom, and now in my 8th as a district e-learning specialist. I'm a fellow Keep Indiana Learning digital learning coach, as Dianna said. Nice sketch, Dianna. Innovation coach coming soon, and a HEC board member. So welcome to everybody. This book has been quite an experience. We've made it all the way to chapter 10. And wow, there was a quote right there at the beginning of this chapter that really tugged on my heartstrings. And it said to the effect, we made about a project the students had done. We made memories. We made them happen in an authentic, magical way. Our teacher could have assigned a project and given us parameters and clipped our wings, but she didn't. And to me, that was the essence of the idea of project-based learning, problem-based learning, PBL. So what did you guys think about that opening part there?
Boy, did that hit me in the gut, because I think of the projects that I did back in my classroom days that I loved, and that I probably did a little bit of that wing clipping. And I think as I was venturing toward, once we kind of went one-to-one in our district, I can reflect back and see some growth, that I gave the students more power, but the ideas and the thoughts that I read here, that story that she shared about their project for her class was amazing.
Agreed. I loved it as well. It kind of made me reflect and think about, I probably had some missed opportunities when I should have, given my students a little bit more flexibility. But then I also thought back as like my time as a student and those teachers that I loved so much, where I learned so much from them. It was because they were doing these type of things where they gave us control, they gave us choice, and they connected what we were doing in classes to the real world and our personal interests. And there's just so much power in that. And I really love it. That's how they decided to end the book, is focusing on that. It really is like a full circle type of moment.
Yeah, I think we all have those moments in school that we remember. Because of how engaging and fun it was and how much learning was going on. And maybe we didn't even realize we were learning, but wow, we were there in the moment. And those are the stories that you remember, and that hopefully as a teacher, you have some of those experiences that you've created for your kids. One of those things that stung me a little bit was that phrase, dessert projects versus main course projects. Now, and they said it in there, nothing wrong with dessert projects. They're fine. All right, so if that's, describes what you're doing, but it's that tack on project at the end of the learning versus the project being the learning. Both are fine, but I'll admit, I was like, okay, yeah, dessert projects, I did a few of those. Guilty as charged. So that it was fun to read that and reflect on that and really think about the things that I did and the shift that I made over time. I used to have, it was just me. I was like, wow, they need to know something before we do this. And I had to get over that. They know they don't. We just need to jump in the middle of it and let them figure it out. And that was a transition that took me years to get through, but it got me to those main course projects.
Well, and isn't it like those moments in class where you ask a question and there's that silence that's so intimidating as a new teacher, and you're like, what? Nobody, and you have to wait, and we have to learn that wait time. And I think too, when our students may not be familiar with these main course projects, so we have to be prepared to guide them, but not jump in and make it a dessert project, because that would be so easy for us to do, because they're so unsure sometimes until they become familiar with this as a regular thing that they do.
Agreed. I think sometimes we just get so nervous as teachers and we worry, and we're like, well, if I don't give them this information, then like they're going to struggle, or they're not going to master this standard at the pace that I need them to get to these other things. And it's just a matter of being like, it's okay. We can give the students a little bit more opportunity to set the pace. And honestly, I feel like there's so many times when I look back where the times where I let go and I gave up some control, which is a little hard for me. I'm a little type A. So just like not being in control of things sometimes just makes me nervous. It's just my personality. But the moments when I did do that, my students did so well. And it's like I didn't give them enough credit. And it's the beauty is in the struggle and letting them kind of go through and figure it out. And the more that we can do that, the better off.
Yeah, agreed. So just for definition's sake, this chapter is really about project-based learning. And just so we're all talking the same language here, the goal of project-based learning is to engage students in investigating authentic real-world problems, coming up with solutions that have the potential to be implemented and used in their real lives. So that's where we're heading towards. That's what we're trying to move the needle towards as we talk about some of the strategies that they offered here. The first strategy they listed, strategy 1, was create a project buffet. And they had a little chart, which they always do in this wonderful book. If you haven't grabbed it, go ahead and grab one. Then the little chart had writing, video, and audio options. And so the key question for the student was, how do you want to share your learning? Find something on here that works for you. And I really love that idea of that project buffet.
And giving students like the choice to come up with their own idea too. I love that they put that on there. I felt like I didn't do that until like right before I left the classroom. Then I was like, ooh, I don't have to come up with all of these options myself, and left that space. And then the students who picked that came up with things that I never would have thought of. And they were amazing projects, and they were so much more meaningful.
And I think too, just that empowerment of giving them the option of how they want to demonstrate their learning, that's going to pay such dividends back in engagement with your class, because they have that connection to the learning, and then it creates a stronger connection to you as the teacher, frankly.
Yep, agreed. Strategy 2 involved embracing a flexible PBL sentence frame. And I so love that they gave an example and a non-example in there. I thought that was so awesome, because if you read the non-example, I was like, okay, well, this isn't so bad. I was expecting something horrible and terrible, and it wasn't bad, but it really didn't move the teacher away from students making decisions. And so when they put the example in there, you're like, okay, now I see the difference. And so I thought that was very, very important. And they followed it up with this sentence frame. And sentence frames that kind of leads the student through the process of designing their project, that provides that flexibility and that control that we know students need, and where they flourish, and we need to be better about giving them. So what do you guys think about that strategy?
I thought of it was a little bit like when I would go bowling as a kid, and there was the bumpers on the side of the bowling lane, because I needed those. So I still had the freedom to pick whatever ball I wanted. I could have whatever form I wanted to try to get the strike, but those bumpers kept me in line. And so I love this guidance to put the power back on the students to do some choice, but yet those frameworks were there to keep them on the right path. And I thought that was such a powerful tool and would be so helpful as somebody gets started on this PBL journey.
Agreed. I like that bowling analogy. I'm going to steal that. I'm going to use that. So thank you for that. I love that they also included the non-example, because I think honestly that was a pretty great way to reflect and think about some of the projects that I know I've done where I was like, oh, I'm so creative. I'm having the kids like take on the role of this like historian or do this. And it's like, I really wasn't giving them that much choice. I might've put some like snazzy roles or descriptive words in there, but they didn't really have a whole lot of options in what they can do. I told them you were going to make a video, or I told them you were going to research this topic, where there's so many more choices and things that would have made it much more engaging for the students if I would have given up some of that control.
Well, and even the connections that it makes to UDL and blended learning throughout just the project-based learning, because so many of us are in these blended learning environments, and maybe sometimes we feel like we're floundering a little bit. And this is a great way to latch on and really create something that's immersive and blended, that hits the PBL marks, that hits the UDL marks that we're all trying to kind of go at, so we can take into account that learner variability. And so I think it's just a nice way of packaging several handy and helpful and necessary components under one umbrella.
Yeah, it was definitely good to see all those frames referenced in that chapter. What this brought me back to was, as I grew and developed as an educator, I'm going to sound just like Lena Darnay here for a second, the ability to say yes, but. Yes, you can do it in that way, but you're still going to write a script. Yes, you can use that technology, but you're still going to do the research. And there's your guardrails example. We're still going to have those things that we need from them academically and intellectually, but how they get there, totally up to them. And the idea that I don't have to be an expert in all of these things. The kid already knows how to use it. Just go use it to share the learning that you're doing.
And me as the teacher, I may learn something from those students along the way in how to use those other technologies or those other things that I can leverage in other places. So it's a win-win.
Okay, so strategy 3 in the book was to create an authentic PBL network. And this is the thing I think that separates PBL projects from a lot of other projects, is there must be an authentic audience for your students to share with, present in front of, talk to, engage with. And they started with things like just making lists and reaching out personally. And so how about phone calls? Do we all need to work at that? Do students need to work at that? Absolutely. How about handwritten notes? Is it a lost art? Maybe. Maybe we can keep it around for a while. What about short introduction videos? Whatever it might be that works for your kids, with the ability to stretch them a little bit and maybe a direction they're not comfortable with. I thought that was awesome. And it brought back a couple of examples from my time in the classroom. One of them, we had a teacher in my building who annually did this thing called the boat race. He was actually a science teacher. So it's an internal project. It didn't extend necessarily outside of the building, but what it did was it forced the students to go to other teachers in the building to negotiate for the parts they needed to build their boat, because every teacher had a little packet with a certain amount of money, and they would go and negotiate, hey, here's how many shares I want in your company, and then they use that to buy the materials. And then later, when I was here at Richmond, I did, with a media specialist, we did a VR project on local history. And she was adamant about making the kids make the phone calls to these local places we were going to visit to shoot our 360 video. And then we brought that back, put it all together. The kids got to go and share it at the mayor's office. And it was just one of those projects that kept growing, but was meaningful to them because of the things that they were able to do and the questions they asked and the new things that they got to try.
As I was reading, I couldn't help but think that with the look that we're making to like reimagining high school, and I have that secondary brain where we're focusing on those community and the business connections for our students, that may enhance the opportunities for this PBL in other areas and other classes, because those other relationships are going to be stronger due to those internships and externships that the students are going to be doing. So it's really kind of a neat time to maybe start to dabble in this, because I think the environment is going to be right for it to grow.
I love that point. I hadn't thought of that, but now I'm like, that does make total sense, that you could totally leverage that, because students are going to be out in the community doing those things anyway. My mind kind of went to, we've had a long history of doing senior projects in my school district. I was actually the first group of students that did it at my high school. So I'm very like, I remember my experience. But a part of that was you had to have a community mentor. And the idea was that, you weren't spending your own personal money on things, that you were getting businesses to help you out in it. You got to really pick the focus of your project. And it was just such an enriching experience. And usually in April is when we get to see the students do their presentations for those projects and see what they did. And it really is something that is so personal to those students, and they do build those communication skills. They do have to make those phone calls and things, and it's really wonderful, and it's really cool to see how they tie it to their academic interests or things that they're excited about in school. And there's been a lot of teachers in our district who have talked about how that project has helped the students become a better social studies student if they tie it to that, or a better writer if a big focus of their project is working with a library. So there's obviously benefits to doing these things.
And I wonder too, as you were talking, Brenny, it made me think, I know we're all going to be looking at these employability skills. And so the different project-based learning is going to be a natural way to incorporate those employability skills that we need to be reinforcing with our students. And then if you tie that in with those community connections, and I think we have a lot of people in our communities that they want to be involved and they don't know how. And this is the how. This is the way to give them that in to have a greater voice and a greater presence.
Excellent, excellent. All right, anything else that either of you wanted to mention before we move into our reflection for chapter 10? I think we're good. We're moving on. So as we reflect here on the final chapter of the shift to student-led, again, so much thanks to Catlin Tucker and Katie Novak for writing this wonderful piece of work. And I could not recommend it more, not only for the storytelling, for the research base, but then for all the templates that are there. So much there for you if you take an opportunity to pick up a copy of that. But just based on chapter 10 and the whole PBL idea, take a minute and think about how you currently use projects. Are they more dessert projects or main course projects, or are you already moving into the PBL area? Do they drive the learning or the assessment that you're trying to do? So that's one thing to reflect on. And then consider the last project that you designed and think about how maybe using a sentence frame that was shared in one of the strategies could help move the needle towards the student being a little more responsible, having a little more voice and choice. So, students are going to explore blank. To do this, they'll take on the role of blank. They'll make personal connections by blank and work to produce in the service of whatever audience they're choosing. And in so doing, they're going to learn those project goals. Just a simple sentence frame like that, provided in the book, is an easy way for you to start making that migration. So I'd like to say thank you to Brenny and Nicole Nelson, who's been with us on most of these, for joining me on this journey, and our very special guest today on this episode, Dianna Knox. Thank you both. And thanks to all of you for joining us. All 10 sessions in this book study can be found in a playlist on the Keep Indiana Learning YouTube channel. Thanks for joining us.